And our next guest came from Graz, from the Institute of Sport Science, University of Graz, from Austria, Professor Peter Hofmann. And he discussing in general about definitions of physical activity and exercise training interaction with non-communicable non-cognitive. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Looks like okay. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. So it's the second time for me to come to this area, and I really enjoyed staying here. It's too much to eat, but
If you want,
it's only we need some additional physical activity. Just to continue from the first talk, we're talking about two sides of the story. It's two coins, or two sides of the coin. One part is that we have severe troubles to activate people. So almost half of the people in Europe are not moving at all. So that's a key problem, we know that. So we need programs like presented before to activate people, to attract physical activity. On the other hand, and this is my part, we need to understand what physical activity is. What is the impact of an activity? What is the prescription of activity? The intensity, the duration, what does it do to people? What is the relationship between an activity and health effects? Because that's what we aim. We need to see health effects. We like to prevent diseases by physical activity. So this is my talk now. It's something completely different like before, but it's a part of the complete problem we face at the moment. So I will start with looking back. It is not long ago that we did not treat patients with exercise. So we kept them in bed, for instance, heart failure patients. It's not long ago that every medical doctor, every cardiologist said, please don't move at all if you have heart failure. Don't move because it's harmful for you, it will kill you. And this was in the 1980s, that's not long ago. Although we know from ancient times, from the Greek, that activity or training is beneficial, even if you have a disease. And looking in old chapters of books, for instance, in an old book from Arnold from Leipzig, 1935, which is pretty old, he described treat several diseases by exercise already at that time. And in the follow-up book in 1956, he described that not treating diabetes with exercise is a mistake already in the 50s. So we're still far apart of doing what we know and what we need to do with patients. What we see now is that nowadays exercise is part of the treatment of diseases, is part of rehabilitation or prevention programs. And what we see is that intensity is increasing. So in some rehab centers at the moment we do highly intense interval training with patients, with really sick people, and working. So from no exercise up to high intense exercise within a short period of time. And the question is, what is the optimum? Where is the benefit, and is there any harm? Is there any risk? Are we going to kill people by doing exercise? Yes, treating patients, we should ask this question. Are we going to kill them? And I will show you one slide, maybe answering this question. Again, we lack some information about that. So we need mechanistic studies relating exercise, activity, defined exercise with health outcomes, with morbidity, with mortality, or with some specific markers of diseases, let's say glucose levels or whatever. Okay. What we do know at the moment is, of course, that we have a problem with obesity. More or less, depending on country, half of 30% up to half or even more of the population is obese. Look in the United States, it's even more. The main cause is overfeeding. That's what I talked before. So we eat a lot because we have the access to high-calorie food, and with lack of physical activity. This is an advantage for workers, of course, because in the former days we had to work hard. Because people were working on farms, working in the industry, so it was really hard work. And they died early because it was hard. Now we have machines doing the work for us. The only machine we work at the moment is a computer, a mobile phone, but it's not really physical activity, it's not tiring. Of course it's tiring, but in a different way. Physical activity or inactivity, not to do anything, and obesity are a real risk for diseases. So it's the major cause of cardiovascular disease, of type 2 diabetes, which is a pre-form of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and cancer. A lot of cancer cases which could be avoided by physical activity. That's what we know at the moment. And the relationship of obesity and low fitness significantly related to an increased all-cause mortality. So we die because we move less than we did in our ancient days. Because we are produced to walk, to run, to be active. In the former days we had to be active to find food, to chase, to hunt, to run away, to escape from this situation. Nowadays we don't have to do that. So obesity, insulin resistance, inactivity increases with age because we don't move that much we need. So looking at the United States, which is the worst case in my thought, we can see that this lack of physical activity will change dramatically our shape of the body. So we see an urgent need to increase physical activity, and that's what the talk before targeted. Because we know that 3% of the costs of the health costs, and this is a huge amount of money, it's about 190 billions of euros every year in Europe. It's a huge amount of money, I can't imagine that, is due to physical inactivity. So 3% of this huge amount is just because of inactivity. And 40% of the whole European countries of people are inactive, which means that they don't even move 10 minutes a day. So it's really a dramatic situation. And looking at the map of the United States and the obesity trends, you can see that from the 1990s on up to 2010, it's just 20 years, it's not long. They moved from most countries being lower than 10 or 15% of obese people up to more than 30% of really obese, which means a BMI higher than 30. 30% of the US population is obese in most parts of the country. Just a few parts which are not. And you see the yellow ones, it's 24%. The highest rate in Europe is in the range of 18 to 20% in some regions, in UK and Germany and specific populations. And this is the trend we face. So this will come to Europe also. And of course this will give some dramatic changes in diabetes. For instance, the costs only for diabetes in Austria, which is a rate of about 600,000 people in Austria. We have a population of about 8 million, and 600,000 this population have diabetes, recognized diabetes. We don't know about the numbers not recognized. And it costs Austria 1.3 billion of euros every year, and the rate is increasing. So we have a dramatic increase of the burden of diseases because of the relationship of eating too much and moving less. So low fitness level increases mortality risk. We die earlier, which is nice for insurances, but of course it costs a lot before. To increase fitness can reduce the mortality rate by about 40%. So just doing something reduces the risk. A normal body weight below 25 BMI, regular, moderate to vigorous physical activity reduces the mortality. So we don't talk about high intense sport. We talk about just moving, just walking to work, walking back, doing some cycling, whatever. There are a lot of studies showing that the regular, moderate activity significantly reduces mortality risk and improves health and fitness. And you can prevent type 2 diabetes, so you even can turn it in the other way. If you have people in a pre-diabetes stage and you start to train them, they get healthy again. If you don't do the exercise, they will be diabetes patients, and at the end they need insulin for their whole life, which costs a lot, and there's a big burden for them. So the question for us is, which kind of sport, which kind of physical activity, because sport and physical activity is not the same, or do we train people? Do we need some specific training programs, defined programs, like we do in the patients? These are the main questions at the moment. I think it's all of everything, dependent on the situation. The main thing, if we start, if we have people who did not do any physical activity or exercise in the last 10, 15, 20 years, they shouldn't start immediately with high intense exercise or something like that. You have, of course, to look at the risks. They have, especially older people, have a higher risk for cardiovascular disease, and of course you have the risk to die from an event if you don't recognize some problems. So to start, we need a screening. We need to test them, at least an ECG. To look at the ECG, if the ECG is normal, you don't need an exercise test. Just look at the ECG and you will see if there is some abnormalities. If the ECG is normal, you can start with the program. But we need to look at the people and to start them if they are healthy. If they are not healthy, they need a specific program, because they need a safe program, standardized program with the medical support. And one part could be a standard ergometer test. What is the target? The main target is to be at least physically active for 30 minutes a day. It's not much. You should question yourself, did you do 30 minutes of exercise today? We should do it every day. I tried it. I walked here in the morning, the short way from the hotel, and back again, and again down, and I will go back. So maybe I can get the 30 minutes today. But that's not really much. So it's at least a minimum. We should collect about 150 minutes a week of moderate activity. The question still is, and I will talk about later, what is moderate? We are not really sure about the definition of low, moderate, or vigorous activity, and I will show you how we could do this. Again, like said before, we should choose activities which are fun. So if you don't like activities, you will not do it long. You will try it, but you will stop it again. So we need activities which are fun. Regular activity increases overall fitness. It increases muscular strength. It reduces mental stress, which is very important in our days. It increases self-confidence. It's a psychological part of our health. It reduces anxiety. So it's very important if you have some kind of depressive symptoms, or if you are in a pre-stage of burnout, something like that. It's part of prevention also for not only for the hard facts of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and whatever. Very important, it improves sleep quality. You sleep better and you recover better during night. And of course, it decreases quality of life. And I think this is the key point, the quality of life. We are not talking about, let's say, cholesterol levels or glucose levels, because this is not an argument for any person, because you don't feel cholesterol. If it's 180 or 200 or 250, you don't feel it, but you feel quality of life. If you move around and you start sweating from the beginning, you're heavily breathing because it's so tiring, it's no fun at all. If you're fit and you can play around with movements and things like this, of course you will do it, and of course it will increase your quality of life. That's what we see in the patients also, that increasing activity, doing training, increases the quality of life. And in all our programs we do with patients, we see that at the end of the programs they feel better. And they like to do things they did not do before. What do we need? Talking about physical activity. The easiest way to be active is to walk. So we have 2 legs to walk. Usually we are not handicapped or so, but most of us are able to walk. And so we should do walking, and we should use our legs to walk. Walking with a normal speed of 4 to 5 kilometers per hour is about 1,000 steps. It's about approximately 50 kilocalories energy expenditure. That's not much. It's just look at the menu tables of McDonald's or so. You can see how much calories a Big Mac is. It's about 550 or something. So you need at least 10 times the amount to just burn one Big Mac, except the French fries. And you have to take the Diet Coke, otherwise it's not working. So this is the relationship we should think of. But at least we should do about 6,000 steps, and we know that by doing 6,000 steps, we gain some beneficial effects. We have health effects by doing 6,000 steps a day. It's about 3 kilometers of walking, and it's easy to calculate or determine that. You just go into Google Maps, you recalculate what you did on a day. So let's say I started at the hotel because I know the address, I put it in, I put the address of the institute in, and I know, okay, it's 250 meters. And it's 4 times 250, so it's 1,000 meters. It's about, yes, I can calculate with half a meter for 1 step, it's about steps like this. I'm doing these measures for the last, let's say, 3 or 5 years, and I know for myself that I'm doing about 8,000 steps a day, and this is enough to keep my weight constant, not to decrease weight, but to keep it constant. So you can find some kind of cutoff point for yourself, activity and eating behavior, just to keep stable. The optimum would be 10,000 steps per day, about approximately 500 kilocalories energy expenditure, additional to your normal energy expenditure. So you don't have to decrease something else. There's some classifications for the step counts, and the World Cancer Research Fund published it. If you're below 5,000 steps a day, you're akinetic. So it's a low physical activity. This is typical for a rainy weekend, for me. On a typical rainy weekend, not going out of the house, just moving around the house, it's about 2,000 to 3,000 steps, not more. You're active the whole day, but you have not enough physical activity you need. If you have about 75,000, it's more or less some kind of activity. The optimum would be 10,000, and if you have more than 10,000, you're really active, or more than 12,500, you're really physically active. So usually you do some sports, you do some running. The only days I have more than 10 to 12,000 is if I visit a country, a town, and I do some sightseeing, and I do it by walking. Last time in Barcelona, I had a day with 25,000 because there's so long distances to walk at BC's Congress, for instance. But the problem is it's just a single day. We need activity on every day during the whole year for the next 20 years, not only 25,000 steps one day and the rest of the year nothing. So this is one of the key problems to change our lifestyle. That walking is an integral part of our day. And The only thing is to do it in an active way, to avoid going by bus or by car, just walk. But of course this needs time, so you have to change your plannings. You have to wake up earlier, you have to go out of the house earlier, you have to plan things differently. The only chance to change it really is to plan it. Just put it in your planner, in a time plan, or in a mobile phone, wherever. Then you can change it. Looking at activity and training, we know that there's strong evidence that there is a relationship between doing physical activity or training and the 4 points, the main 4 points are related to disease. It's the pathogenesis, so it's the disease itself. It's aerobic exercise performance, so we increase performance by doing something, by being active. It's quality of life, and it's the symptoms. And for all of these 4 dimensions, we know that activity is changing it in a positive direction. And looking at a complete map in an excellent paper by Peterson and Sartin. Unfortunately, Sartin died this summer, but I think he's one of the real great physiologists of the world. He presented this paper in 2006 already, showing for most, if not all, chronic diseases that in most cases we have the evidence, which means we have enough studies to show that physical activity and training is helpful to treat the disease. For chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, for heart disease, for peripheral arterial occlusion, or whatever. Take any chronic disease, train patients, and you will see that it's helpful for them and they will improve. Even in severe diseases, in end-stage diseases, even in very, very strict situations like during chemotherapy, you can exercise people, but of course you need to adapt and you have to prescribe exercise very precisely in these situations. Not for healthy people, of course, but of course in patients you have to do it. There's a lack about the knowledge, the specific knowledge, the mechanistic relationships between activity and some specific markers of diseases. What we can see now is that higher intensities, more activity, so a high volume of activity, has higher effects. Or if we do higher intensity exercise, like sprint exercise, there's a specific group in the United States showing that sprint exercise with very low volume also increases oxygen uptake, oxidative capacity of muscles and whatever. So just with 15 minutes of high intense exercise, you can improve quite a lot of your aerobic possibilities. But we still need a lot of information and we need some papers. How about effects we expect? Looking at this diagram, which is specifically for the prevention of cancer, but it's more or less the same for the other diseases also. If we increase activity, this will, of course, change adiposity. It will change body composition. We get more muscle mass and we have less fat content. And we know that fat content in the body has some side effects. Some low-grade inflammation, adipocytokines are increasing, blood glucose is elevated and things like that. And all this is counteracted by activity. It reduces, of course, body weight, it reduces inflammation, it normalizes blood glucose, it normalizes blood pressure, and all this in a combination reduces the risk to get some disease or to die early from disease, from the well-known diseases, cardiovascular diseases, metabolic diseases. The problem talking about physical activity is that usually physical activity is not really prescribed exactly. So that's what I talked before. What is moderate? What means slow? What means vigorous? We have a wide heterogeneity of assessments. Usually we ask people, what did you do the last 3 weeks or something? And of course, we will not get definite and clear and objective information, because nobody of us knows really what we did 3 weeks ago. Maybe you know if you write it down, but usually you know it not. The most self-reports, questionnaires, which are big instruments. So we get very big information, and especially if we ask, what did you do in your younger age, at your younger age, when you were 20? Did you do sports? Did you do exercise? Some of us remember, because if we did sports, if we were engaged in competitions or training, of course we know that we did some training, we did some competitions, but ask people who are not familiar with physical activity or sport or training what they did 40 years ago. They will not be able to tell you. And of course it's important to know that. A few days ago we had an exam of a colleague who did a thesis on physical activity biography questionnaire. So we asking people, what did you do in your young age and so on, because we know that at the specific times we have specific effects of activity. So there are some specific time zones. For instance, one very specific time zone is menopause of women, or the early start to changing, getting a woman. So the hormonal changes in the body are some very important phases, and it's a question if exercise or training has some additional effects during these sensitive phases. It's also for the boys during puberty. So we know that there are some sensitive phases, but it's very hard to ask a 60, 70-year-old person what happened 40 years ago. So it's weak information, and we need hard information. So the question is how to get clear results. The only thing to know this is by prescribing exercise exactly, by doing randomized control studies. So starting exercise studies now and doing follow-up studies in the next 10, 20, 40 years, as the Harvard alumni study did or other studies did. So talking about exercise prescription, we need to talk about incremental exercise. I will go quickly through this just to show you that lactate is one component we use to prescribe exercise, and lactate is increasing during incremental exercise. So I don't want to go into the details, it would last too long. But what we can see here is we have some regions where lactate is not increasing, although we do some exercise. So we are balanced, metabolically balanced on a muscular level. So this is usually low intensity, we can talk, we can look around, we have some fun, and it's not really tiring. We have some exercise where lactate is increased. This is a situation we feel that is more tiring. It's not that easy to talk, but you still can talk. But you are breathing a bit, you start to sweat. So this is typical for exercise and not physical activity. So this is some part of moderate activity training. And this part here, the phase 3, with a strongly increasing lactate, is highly intense exercise where you have to stop pretty early because of fatigue. You have to stop because your body forces you to stop because it's that tired. So we have these 3 phases, and with the 3 phases we can explain exercise performance. As you can see here, this is real data from young healthy sports students, male and female, and in a relative term the curves are the same. And I could show you curves also for patients. It looks the same, but the 100% in the male subjects is 300 watts, in the girls it's 220 watts, and in the patients it's about 100 watts. But the pattern is the same, but we can describe performance on the one hand, and we can describe different zones, different intensity zones with a different meaning, because staying here means this is activity which is not really tiring, and of course doesn't make great effects. Working here is really tiring, is heavy exercise, making very good effects, but having risk. And of course this is moderate here, doing some effects and having some risk, but not that much. And the question is what to prescribe for a specific person. But what I want to focus on is we need a prescription of what people should do. And in studies, and that's what I want you to take home as a take-home message, if you do some exercise studies, if you do some intervention studies, increasing physical activity, you should know where your people stayed with their exercise, because you can relate the kind of exercise they did, the intensity, the volume, to a specific outcome. And that's what we need to know, because if they do some exercise and we don't know about the intensity, the volume usually we know, but not the intensity. If we don't know the intensity, we don't have any idea what are the mechanisms increasing risk or increasing health in some, but not in others. And this is the outcome we usually see in physical activity studies, that some show some good effects and others not. All of them did some moderate exercise, but I'm sure that some did not only moderate, but maybe heavy, and others did not moderate but low. But they termed it like this. We need some data about that. We need some objective markers. And what we apply is a so-called three-phase model, and this is not only for the lactate level, of course, this is also for all other measures of spirometric data, but I don't want to go into the details here. Usually we don't train incremental tests or something, but we do constant load exercise. So we start to do exercise, we continue with exercise, or we do intermittent exercise. And usually we see the picture, as I mentioned before, also in constant load exercise. So with the low pace, lactate is not increasing, so this means this is really low intensity exercise. In the moderate, we see some elevated lactate, but we can keep it constant. But this exercise is clearly limited in time. So you end up, let's say at least in a few hours, with empty fuel stores in your muscles, and you have to stop because you can't continue. And here you have to stop in about 12 to 15 minutes because of exhaustion. And you can see the real data here, and that's what we also measured. If we take these three phases and we look at the lactate, then we expect this time course, and what we see is this. This is a combination of 24 subjects, older ones, young ones, women, men, trained, untrained. And the pattern is as expected. If you stay below a threshold, if you stay in this phase 1, which is usual physical activity like, no lactate increase. When we know that lactate is a regulator, is some kind of indicator of adaptation, we can expect that we don't get much adaptation by exercising in this range. So physical activity has some effects, but some small effects, and you have to do it for a long, long time, for years, every day, to get effects. If you need quick effects, you need to go here. You need higher intensities. And we see this in this range here. You can keep your lactate stable, which means you can continue with exercise. It's tiring. It's not easy going, especially the one here. It's limited in time to maximum of, let's say, 2 hours for trained, and for the untrained about 30 to 45 minutes. You're running for half an hour or something like this. But doing this here, doing this here, of course, it's really exhausting. You have some good effects, but you will not continue that often because it's tiring. If you start exercise here with untrained people, they will never come again. They do it once and then stop, and then they will never do it again. So the best is to start here, and then you increase intensity up to here. Okay. One side step to intensity, or to the heart rate. We have to be careful with exercise prescription with heart rate, because we have a different time course of heart rate, as you can see here, the green and the red line. And with the same maximum heart rate, you can have different thresholds. So the submaximal values are not the same, so we have to be very, very careful prescribing exercise only by heart rate, and especially if if you're working with patients, especially patients with cardiac disease, receiving beta blockers, which influence, of course, the heart rate, which typically change the heart rate in this direction of the red line here. There's no relationship of a percentage of maximum heart rate with some training intensities. So we have to be very careful to adapt the percent maximum heart rate or the heart rate reserve, which is the Carbonell formula, to regular exercise prescriptions. Take care, please, of that. If you're interested in that, I just can focus shortly on that. I can send you some of our papers about that, showing this relationship and how to deal with the problem. Okay. And this is a real curve. You can see with the same maximum and the same start and the same like that curve, you have some differences at the threshold. And of course, it's not the same if you train 10 beats higher with your heart rate than you should do. You have to try it. If you try it, you will have to stop after 10 to 15 minutes because of exhaustion, or it's just easy going. This is the difference of 10 heartbeats. And you need some individual data from subjects, and of course this is another problem. If we do exercise studies directed to physical activity, usually we have huge populations. We have big groups, 400, 500, thousands of people looking at it. And of course, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to do an exercise test on all these people. So it's very, very complicated to adapt the big studies to the specific needs we have to prescribe exercise. But if we don't prescribe exercise precisely, we don't have any idea how to relate exercise to the outcomes. So that's what we have to keep in mind. We also can do interval exercise. That's what many of the people like. Many don't like to do continuous exercise, but we can do interval exercise. We can prescribe intervals by the peak, by the duration of the peak. We can prescribe it by the mean intensity or by recovery. And we can do the same like we do it in the interval, in the constant load exercise. We can use the same picture of the lactate curve. We can define some specific intensities, and very important, that that's what I want to focus you on, is changing the recovery periods without changing the intervals. So doing the same exercise, running for 20 seconds, pretty fast, and then stopping. It's a difference if you stop here or recover for the same amount of time as the interval was, so 20-20 or something, or if you do double the recovery. It reduces the mean load, and the more the mean load is reduced, the lower is the heart rate. So if you need specific effects on your muscles, and you like to reduce the cardiovascular strain, especially in patients or in people who are not used to training intensely, then you need to adapt the recovery phases, like seen here. So just changing the recovery time reduces the mean load. There are some nice papers on that, and if somebody likes, they can send you this. We do know some very, very good effects of the interval type exercise because you can use high intensity. And this makes some very good effects on oxygen uptake, on some molecular markers in the muscle, on cholesterol levels, on the NT-proBNP, which is a level of heart strain, or some additional effects on C-reactive protein, which is an inflammation marker. So we see all these positive changes with a high intensity. And there are some good studies on that, some meta-studies on that, showing that intense exercise, doing it in an interval mode, has some better effects than continuous exercise. So doing intervals is easier, is some small, high-intense parts. People usually like to do that. Kids like to do that. Kids play like that. Kids don't play in a continuous way, but they play like maximum exercise, stop. Maximum exercise, stop. Watch them playing, and you see that they're doing intervals. And of course, they know how to play around. So they adapt pretty good with that, and we should learn from them to apply intervals also. This is just an example showing that doing short intervals with about 20 seconds of high intense exercise, this was maximal exercise from an incremental test, about 300 watts, which is pretty high. We get the same curve, like that curve, than the constant load exercise with the same mean load, but increasing the workload by just lengthening the intervals to 4 minutes, which is a traditional form now, and it's very popular at the moment, with 4-minute intervals. Increases like that up to 12, in some cases up to 20. Because lactate production is related to the length, to the time, to the duration of exercise. If you shorten the duration, you can keep lactate at the low level. So we are able to adapt interval exercise pretty nicely, and we can show this in our papers, and if you're interested, I can send to you. And this is the interesting fact that with the same mean load, the mean heart rate and the mean oxygen uptake is the same, so the calorie consumption or the energy expenditure is the same. Just have higher peak values here and here with the 4 minutes. So it's not an extra effect you gain from this 4 minutes, it's just more strenuous and it has more risk. And talking about the risk, there's a very nice paper from a Norwegian group showing that doing highly intense interval exercise, especially the 4-minute intervals, you have a risk which is 5.6 times higher than continuous exercise. So if you have people, if you deal with people with having a risk because they have a disease or they have some risk for a disease, you should not do high intense intervals, especially not the long ones, because the risk to have an event, a risk to die, is 5 to 6 times higher. On the other hand, the effects are higher with the intense exercise. So it's a question what we should do. If you have a monitorized situation, if you measure ECG, heart rate, if you're working with people and you see how they behave, you can do this. But never let them do this alone at home. So you should not prescribe interval exercise for people doing exercise at home, but you can do it in the center or wherever. So, because you are familiar with that and you can see that this highly strenuous or not. Okay, so it's very important to do that. So what we do is to prescribe exercise in this scheme. Phase 1, the green one here, is constant load exercise, is recovery if it's short enough. Occupational work is within this region, so you only can work for 8 hours if you stay with the intensity here. So we did about more than 300 tests in workers, hard workers, and all of them stayed within this region here. Although it was very strenuous muscular work, nobody of them was above this level here, because otherwise you can't work for 8 hours. And we did a specific experiment. We kept ultra-distance cyclists. One of them won the Race Across America. Maybe you're familiar with the race. They are going through the United States, 5,000 kilometers in about 8 days. And the winner was faster than 8 days. He cycled about 25 kilometers per hour as a mean during 5,000 kilometers with about 2 hours of sleeping a day. And we kept them cycling for 24 hours in the lab. So they really cycled 24 hours, and they can do it because they stayed in this region here. So you are possible to do a huge amount of exercise if you stay here. But if you exceed this point here, you're limited to about, let's say, 3 to 5 hours. Then you have to stop. And if you exceed this limit here, you have to stop in a few minutes because you're really exhausted. So keep this in mind. When you talk about activity, that we need to know about intensities and intensity prescription. So to finalize my statements, we know that inactivity is a major health problem. Physical activity may help to reduce risk. So if we are able to increase activity in our population, then we will get some benefits. And more activity or moderate or high intensity is more beneficial. So do more and do it more intense. This is the key question, the key point. We need standardized exercise training in patients, and of course we need standardization of intensities to understand the effects of physical activity in studies. Higher intensities do have a higher risk, as I mentioned before, so we have to be careful. And an additional thing, and I think this was mentioned in the talk before, we do need to use modern techniques. So there are some technologies we can use. We have smartphones, everybody of us has a smartphone. You have step counts on your smartphone. You just put you have your smartphone 24 hours a day on your body. And you can, of course, measure your steps, your step counts. You can accumulate them. And you can see what is the relationship. Just step on your weight scale every morning, and you will see the changes of the weight related to the amount of steps you do. There are some additional things, wristbands. We're talking about Apple Watch, we are talking about Samsung Gear and things like this. We should use this because especially young people use this technology, and maybe this is a key, as similar to the adventure style mentioned before, to target a specific group. We will not get all of them, but a specific group, we will not get the older ones, because they are not really familiar, not all, but some with smartphones. But of course, some of them will. And this is a specific population we can get with them. So, thank you for your attention, and
thank you, Peter, for a very provocative presentation. I hope it will be interesting question for you. Short question and long answer. Depends. I'm interested to provocate some people which is inside. 20 years ago we used the pedometer and found that children which have 9-year-olds make 45,000 steps per day. I'm interested for the daily result because I know that even Professor Pašić calculate that, but they use accelerometer. I'm interested for the today's date. How many steps make children which have 10 years old?
We didn't use pedometers, we used such, not accelerometer, it's a new kind of monitoring.
okay.
So tomorrow you'll hear new stuff.
Okay.
Tomorrow, yes.
Of course, kids have more steps.
If you're interested for that days, you must come tomorrow to the session of physical education. And I also try to provocate my colleague, Professor Tejkovic, which make PhD research about the measuring of physical activity in different levels of aerobic zones. Maybe
No moment in this moment.
not in this moment. I'm not good in my job. If anyone has any comment or question, please.
I'm a student of this faculty, and I have one question. So, can you say something about differences between post-exercise energy expenditure between continuous exercise and interval exercise?
So you mean the recovery period?
Yeah.
It's dependent on if you're looking at the whole body level or at the local level, and it's dependent on the mean exercise load. If the mean exercise between continuous and interval is the same, the overall reaction is the same. But of course you get different effects during exercise within the muscle because of the high intensity in the intervals, and of course you have some changes and differences in recovery. So of course you will use more glycogen because of the high intensity. You have a greater drop of glycogen stores within the muscle, and you have a higher need to fill up the glycogen stores compared to continuous exercise. It will be different, but it's not that much. But usually the differences described in the literature between interval and continuous exercise are because the mean intensities are not the same. So that's why I focused on that. It's very important to calculate the mean intensity. It's pretty easy. You just calculate the area under the curve. You take the maximum intensity in the interval at the time, and you take the recovery intensity at the time, and you add both areas and divide it by the complete time. Then you have the mean intensity. And the mean intensity from the interval should be the same than the continuous. Then you can compare it, otherwise you can't compare it. And usually, we did a literature search for that, and I think we found about some 100 studies on interval training. I think it was only 2 comparing the mean intensity, because nobody's thinking about that. But it's very important, and the mean intensity is the key intensity for the cardiovascular strain, for the overall strain. As you saw, the different intensities in the 2 interval types I showed you did not give any difference in the heart rate and the VO2 response. They were the same because the mean intensity was the same. So the acute response to the interval is different, but the overall response is the same. And so you have to divide these overall responses and local responses in the muscle. Is that? Yeah.
Thank you. We have one more question.
My name is Vladimir Vidic. I'm a student of the PhD course in this college, and I'm very interested in diabetes and high intensity interval training. And my question to you, are you aware from your studying of the literature, comparing this specific thing, the volume of high intensity training in order to get the benefits for the health in diabetic people, and in the simple terms. I saw one BBC, I think it was a documentary, that there was a really nice gain in reducing diabetic symptoms, such as increasing insulin response or something like that, from only 3 bouts of 20 seconds interval training.
Yes.
And if you have a good result from 3 times 20 seconds, are there any studies that compare volume of that high intensity training? Because nobody would like to do 10 sets of high intensity. So my question is, do you have compared results? What is the optimum, as you said? How can you prescribe? What is the optimal prescription for diabetes in high intensity? Do you know anything about that?
It's an excellent question, because it addresses the key question. We have to ask, what is the basic pathology of diabetes, type 2, not type 1. The basic pathology of type 2 diabetes is that you have a high insulin level, a high glucose level, but you have receptors, glucose transporters and receptors within your muscle which are not working. So you can't take up glucose into the muscle because you don't move. And the insulin, the high insulin level, tries to force glucose into the muscle, but the muscle don't use glucose. So if you have the resistance, yes, this is the problem. And if you do high intense exercise, the muscle opens for glucose without insulin. So you don't need insulin during exercise to take up glucose in the normal situation. In the diabetes situation, this is a signal for the cell to open and to translocate the glucose transporters from inside the cell to the cell surface. And this opens the cell. And we know that high intensity is better to do this than low intensity, independent of the amount of exercise you do. Of course, if you do long exercise, maybe you get the same effects after a long period of time.
That was not my question.
Yeah.
The question was, do you need prolonged high intensity intervals?
I'm not aware of...
What is the volume of high intensity for diabetes? That's specific. I know this question. But are you aware of such studies?
No. From a pragmatic point of view, even a single high intense exercise will help you. Doing more is more beneficial. I'm not aware of a specific amount because maybe it will be an individual. Because if you look at the cell and looking at the disease state, how far the disease has proceeded, it can be that you have some receptors within your cell sleeping, and you can translocate them easily with an exercise.
Yeah.
Or it can be a state where you don't have the receptors in your cell and you have to produce them. So it lasts time and you need more exercise, you need more stimulus. But the key is, and this is what we can see in the literature, if you do resistance exercise and And you can do high intense resistance exercise, even in patients, because it's just muscular work. And if you do it with low muscle masses, it's no problem for the cardiovascular system. You can do that. It's just burning the muscle, but yeah, it's not really a problem. But you have a high intensity on the muscle, and this is better in the diabetes state than doing low intensity or moderate intensity endurance exercise. If you do intervals, you're more close to the resistance exercise. And maybe this is the case why it's working. But you can combine resistance and high intensity intervals. But we have to be careful, of course, of the overall situation of the patient. And of course, if they are willing to do it.
No, that was not the question.
Yeah. But the key is we have to bring them to a situation where they do it and they continue to do it. That's it. Because if you don't do it, you don't have the benefit. So it's the other side.
Is there one more question?
Thank you so much for your presentation, but at least for the last 10 years, I am listening under this type of data, then I am sure that we won't be able to change the human behavior in a short time. But I respect for the old data, but I think for the human behaviors mostly are related to economic and business relationship and education. And what do you think about that? To give or to have the people, the balance, the good activity behavior.
You address the key point, because that's what I mentioned before, that it's a specific part of the population. You can target with a specific intervention. We know that education, income, social situation is very important. So if you're rich, if you're highly educated, you're healthier. That's what we know. And if you're poor, if you're low educated, you have bad situations, you're not healthy. And when you remember, if you remember the map I showed from the United States, it's the poor region. It's just the poor and it's the black. So it's more or less the health situation is a situation of income situation, education situation. And of course we need programs for the specific groups. And it will be very, very difficult to attract these groups, specifically these groups. On the other hand, this is one part how to convince people to do that. This is one side, this is maybe your side. And I'm trying to find out what we need to do that we get effects. So we should get together and combine it. Of course, you should not do the wrong things, and we should try to find out that things we know that are working are not working in all groups. And how to use different things, other professions, psychology, whatever, to change. The best practice model for me is cardiac rehabilitation in Austria. Usually in Austria we had a program which lasts 4 weeks. People improve, they go home, and after 1 year they come back with the same situation again. And then we started to do some kind of ambulatory cardiac rehabilitation, which means that people are able to go into a rehab program 3 times a week for almost a year. So it's a long time. They go there every week and they have very good supervised training there. They have psychologists there, the cardiologists, they have sports science, training therapists, they have people talking about food, nutrition. So it's comprehensive care, and that's what we need. And with this program we can change behavior. And if we look at these people finishing their rehab program after almost 1 year, looking at them after a year later, they are still on a high level, on a health level. So we can change it, but we need a long time to change them. At least, I think, half a year. And it's not a medical problem. we have some medical problems with diseases, of course, but to change the behavior of people is not a medical problem. You need psychologists, you need pedagogy, you need to understand the situation people are in. So we need sociology, we need the economic standard, whatever. And you're completely correct with your comment. Thank you.
Professor Dosset? And after that, did you have any comment more? After that, we finish.
In one word, what is the much more important, except overeating we usually do in severe sports? Volume, intensity, or frequency of physical activity of exercise?
In my opinion, it's frequency.
Frequency.
Do it every day. Because every day you don't move is a step back. And you will recognize that if you do exercise every day, not training, just do some activity, and you do, let's say 1 or 2 days, nothing, you will start again. You feel that on the day after you do nothing. It's completely different. If you have a feeling for, and if you're a sportsman, you have that feeling, you feel that it is different. And it is a step back, and you can measure that. And the best recognition of that is if you take healthy subjects, trained subjects, and put them in bed, and keep them lying for 3 weeks, they are sick. They will get into a disease because they don't move. Healthy young people. So this is the point. So do it every day. We are made for walking, for running, for jogging, not for cycling. But this is an alternative. Yes, yes. We should use our muscles because the organs are.
Not true. We must.
We must. Okay.
We must.
Yeah, we must not, but we die earlier. We have the freedom, choice, but
Freedom of the choice.
Thanks a lot.
okay, thank you.
No, last one. I also last one.
Thank you. We continue for 20 minutes in 5 hours and 10 minutes more.
I
It is
just
not
want
correct.
to ask our guest a very interesting question because we have some new information about ethics of physical activity of with a cancer patient. Would you please tell us a little bit about that?
What we talked yesterday.
Yes. Only
Shortly.
Shortly. Yes.
We know that activity can prevent cancer. So if you're physically active, you have lower risk to get cancer or to die from cancer. If you are diseased, if you have the disease, it helps you during your treatment. So it helps you during chemotherapy, it helps you during radiation or after surgery. Sometimes people will be trained before surgery, specifically the lung cancer patients, because if your performance is low, you will not survive surgery. So you have to be trained before to survive surgery. So this is what we know. There are some groups doing this, and if your treatment is finished, you need to do exercise because if you don't do that, you have a higher risk that the disease comes back again, and you have a higher risk to die early from the disease. In breast cancer patients, we know that 30 to 50% lower risk to get the disease again if you do exercise or if you train. There's some big programs running in Canada, in Australia at the moment, and there are some mechanistic ideas about the relationship of exercise, low and high intensity exercise, with the start of the disease and with the progression of the disease. So we are able to influence this disease in some cases better than with the medication. And it helps us with the treatment, with the chemotherapy and with the radiation. So we should think of standard exercise prescription in patients, and specifically also in cancer patients. Not in all, because you cannot train every people, but you can move them, and you can do some physiotherapy in some cases. But if you are able to move, you should do it. Thank you for the question. Very, very